Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and today's video is going to be about how I made this little hamster commission. So I'm just about to send her off to go home to the commissioner, but I thought I'd go through in a YouTube video of how I made her. She's got little sculpey hands, a little white stripe down there, whiskers and stuff. So I'll go through the process of making her. She's got a ball and socket armature inside and a little tail. So yeah, if you want to know how I made her, then just keep watching. Alright, so if you haven't seen my video on sculpting the hamster face, you can check it out as one of my previous videos, but I just basically used some Sculpey to do it, two different ones, Sculpey Original, which is the white one, and Super Sculpey, which is the beige coloured one. The beige colour is going to be one that is showing instead of having fur over it, so that's why I did it in beige. And the eyes are also made from Sculpey, but you can all check that out in my previous video. So I'm just going to lay down some paint around the eyes really quickly. I'm using the Chromacryl acrylic water-based paint, and I'm just applying a little bit around the eye area, being careful not to get it on the actual Sculpey eye, just because I wanted to keep the colour true to the Sculpey, and hopefully it turns out, well, it did turn out quite well when I put some glaze on it, but I didn't need to apply any what do you call it, primer beforehand, just because most of it's going to be covered with fur anyway, so I didn't need to do that. So I just did a little experiment with putting some really watered down paint on top of the nose area, just to give it a little bit of bit more colour, a bit more red colour, and sort of sink into all the grooves and stuff. So I added a watered down colour to it. It looks a bit strong at the moment, but I end up watering it down a little bit more, just so it runs into all of the details and sort of brings them out as well. And I'm just sort of dabbing it to get rid of any excess paint that I think is too much. And again, I'm using some water-based acrylic paint by the brand Derivian Matisse. But you can find anything similar in your local crafts stores or online. And I did the same sort of thing with the little hands as well. I just applied some watered down paint to the areas just to get into all the grooves. But yeah, I ended up leaving the rest of them to just look kind of beigey. So these will be attached to the armature once I'm up to that stage, and again being sculpted out of Super Sculpey. I then decided to paint all of the white area with black, just because I'm going to be applying black faux fur to the actual face, so I decided to paint it all black so there's no white show through when I apply the fur. But I used just a black paint by Derivian Matisse again, and just applied it with a larger brush this time, being careful not to go over all of the beige areas and also the eyeballs. So I didn't need to be too particular about where I'm actually painting or how much coverage there is, just as long as the majority of the white doesn't show through and is covered. So when you apply the faux fur, there's no white showing through. Moving on to the faux fur, this faux fur is a nice black faux fur. It's got a different texture to the other one, and I thought it would work really well for this hamster. So I'm using a pattern that I previously made for a mouse lemur. The body was very, very similar, so I decided to just modify it as I drew on the patterns. And I'm just drawing it out with some chalk on some black. On the black, obviously you can use something else when it's a lighter one. I'd recommend using grey lead for lighter ones, because then you don't have any show through of other things. So I'm just roughly cutting it out so I can work on it over on my desk. I don't have to lean over like I am here, and just cutting out a main area of that. Alright, little look at the faux fur closely. So you can see here, well, you kind of can't see really because it's so dark. It's a nice plush faux fur. It's got a nice texture to it. And I'm just cutting out all the patterns that I drew on before using a small pair of sharp scissors. I like to use these scissors because I can get in between the pile of the faux fur and not actually cut it. And I'm just cutting the backing of it. So I've got 3 pieces for this particular doll. I usually do my patterns in 3 pieces and then including a tail, which is 4. But because hamsters don't really have tails, they have like a little nub thing. I decided to go with a sculpey tail. So I'm going to be sewing in a little piece of white fabric, but that video will be over on my Patreon, how I sewed that in. But I can have a look at what it looks like once it's been sewn up. But yeah, like I said, it's available for my $5 and up tiers. You can find that over on my Patreon right now. So this is what it looks like when I've sewn the rest of it up on my sewing machine. I've left the back end open just because I need somewhere to flip it the right way around, so I usually flip it through the back end and leave the legs open as well, so I can flip the legs as well the right way around. So I'm just trimming some of that excess fur so it's not too bulky, and when I flip it the right other way around. So a little look at what the flipping looks like. Use a wooden tool sometimes to help poke it through. I wouldn't recommend using a metal tool because you have a chance of ripping the actual fabric and then you'll have to patch up the hole anyway. Sometimes this can be a bit of a tedious task, but I mean, there's other ways of doing it. You can find that over on my Patreon as well, but this is my main way that I do the bodies. The other way takes quite a long time, so it's more for more refined bodies. And here's a little look once it's been flipped the right way around. I just sort of tease out any of the pile that's been stuck down while in the sewing process, within the sewing process, and I just use a little pin like tool like this one that helps poke it out. Don't be too rough because you can undo the stitching, so something to keep in mind when you're pulling all of the pile out. Once that's done, I can move to making the armature. I have a ball and socket armature for this doll, and you can find a tutorial about that in my shop. You can also find some ball and socket parts in my shop as well. Sorry, the tutorial is on my Patreon on how to put it together. And then once I've inserted it into the faux fur body, I can start gluing and sewing. So I'm using a tacky fabric glue to adhere the faux fur to the sculpey, and I get this one from a store here called Spotlight. It's nothing special. You can get a big bottle for like $19. I know it's a bit of a rip-off here, but that's how much it costs. But I found this glue to be quite good and pretty strong when adhering fabrics to clay. Some of the things it doesn't work for is maybe plastics. It's not really great for sticking plastics, but yeah, it works really well for fabric, hence fabric glue. Once that's been stuck on, I can start sewing everything up. So I start by sewing the front legs together using a ladder stitch. Get yourself a good quality thread. It really helps when you're sewing everything up, and it's less likely to snap or break. I have a ladder stitch tutorial on my YouTube channel that you can find out how to do it if you don't know how. And then once I've sewn this all up, I use that same fabric tacky fabric glue to glue those pieces to the arms and legs. I also like to sort of half stuff the doll. I use polyfill to stuff it, just to make sure it's looking like it's what it's supposed to look like. And the polyfill is sort of like the same thing that you find in cushions and stuff like that. But there's other alternatives like beads and glass beads and stuff, silicone beads, just things like that. So just find one that works for you. So once that's all sewn up, I can start applying the fur to the face, and then she's pretty much finished. I apply some little details like whiskers and stuff. Whiskers is available in my shop and also on my Patreon. If you want to know what I make them out of and how I do them, you can find it out on there. This was a commission, so she's not for sale, but I have more dolls in my shop at creaturesofnat.com if you're looking for some dolls. You can also check me out on Instagram and Facebook at Creatures of Nat, and thank you to my Patreons for supporting me. I really do appreciate it. The link is in the description box if you want to join. There's heaps of things on there like printables and tutorials and whip pictures, so something for everyone. But anyway, I will catch you in the next one. Bye.